Welcome to episode 0 of the Daniel's Nemesis podcast, reading XBook, chapter 0, Synopsis. Earnest music there, welcoming us to the new Daniel's Nemesis podcast, a podcast where I lay my claim to the throne as king of the internet. This is a series of podcasts where each week I read a chapter from a book that I wrote many a moon ago. This book is so amazing that nobody would dare publish it, and the only way to get it out there into the world is through here, the internet. And basically, none of you are going to be listening to this anyway. So this is not a real episode today, this is just an introductory episode. But what I want to do is I just want to explain a little bit more about the book. The book is entitled XBook, which really worried me because at the time it sounded like a really cool idea. I used to listen to a radio station called XFM, and on XFM they had a show called the X List. Shortly later, Microsoft brought out a brand new console called the Xbox. And I began to get worried because I started thinking that, oh my god, now soon everybody is going to be calling their books or films or whatever X something or other. So I was starting to get a bit worried, but let's face it, I don't need to be worried anymore. None of that ever happened, and also this book never came out. But it is called XBook. So this book came out of many years of drafting and rewriting and lots of influences as I grew up. The draft of the book that I shall be reading from is the final ever draft that I ever worked on, which is dated at July 24th, 2006. It started right here, right in the room that I'm recording this in my childhood bedroom, when I was just a mere teenager. At that time, I was quite the ignoramus. I knew nothing. In terms of movies, Independence Day was just about the biggest movie I could imagine. And as the book goes on, you're certainly going to see lots and lots of references, if not actual plot ideas, stolen from that movie. I was also very heavily influenced by Terry Pratchett at that time. I love his Discworld books, always have done, always will do. And I wanted to keep a sense of that kind of humour. A third and final influence was Blackadder Goes Forth, a sitcom set in the World War I trenches. And again, a lot of characters, certainly not plot this time, but a lot of characters have been blatantly stolen from that. You'll be able to work them out if you're in any way familiar with Blackadder Goes Forth. I later went to university, and the only university I could get into was doing a film and drama production. I had no interest in film, as I said. Biggest film for me at that time was Independence Day. But I soon came across the likes of Louis Benoit, particularly the movie Un Chien Andalou, and I just realised that you can do anything that you want to. And so I did. Later revisions as a student were just bonkers apeshit crazy, basically. I just opened up my mind and just channeled any dark thought, any surreal moment, any dream that I had into the book. And so that's what this book is. A mixture of Blackadder Goes Forth, Independence Day, Un Chien Andalou, and another influence of mine at that time, Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. I'll be honest, it is a bit disturbing, it is a bit dark in places, but at the same time this is a bad book. This is a terrible book. And so each week I want to read a chapter to you. I haven't looked at a book for 9 years, so it's going to be as much of a surprise for me as it is going to be for you. After I read each chapter, I'm going to have a number of different sections where I look at various aspects of the book. I'm going to be looking at my favourite particular quote. I'm going to be looking at the things that I like in that particular chapter. And I'm going to be analysing myself. I'm going to be analysing the surreal moments that I put into the book, the messages that I'm trying to convey, the symbolism, and I'm going to be looking at the kind of person that I was when I was about 18 years old. This podcast is not to show my literary skills. Think of this podcast as being for lovers of terrible literature, people who love Ed Wood movies, for example, and I love Ed Wood movies. Or you can think of this as a how to not write a book. Let's face it, for all you budding authors out there, you need to be reading the best literature available to you. But just as much as you need to be reading the best, you need to be reading the worst. This will show you all the things that you should not be doing with your book. For example, the complete lack of research that I put into my book. The lack of life experience I had when I was still young, and just absolutely no knowledge of how to write a character or how to write any kind of plot whatsoever other than stealing from previous movies. As cheesy as this book is, I'm still incredibly proud of it, however. Yeah, it has its terrible moments, and yet I still feel it has some many great moments, some many great pieces of writing that, to this day, still surprise me and bowl me over and just make me laugh. Or at least that's how I felt 9 years ago. Let's see how I feel now, shall we? But I haven't told you anything about the book yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a synopsis that I sent to publishers when I was attempting to get this book out. Here we go. The premise of XBook is that of an alien invasion of Earth immediately after the end of the First World War in 1918. Having fled from their native planet, the aliens known as the Trascons are looking for a new planet to settle on and continue with their way of life. After much searching, Earth was felt to be the closest and easiest option. But having travelled for nearly 1,000 years, Earth is no longer the place that they first knew it to be. Feeling humans to be very hostile, the Trascons prepare to invade. On Earth, the humans are not prepared for any of this. Given just 24 hours warning, a defensive wave is quickly prepared. Needless to say, the Trascons are far too advanced for the humans, but after a crash landing, the humans are able to gain hold of one of the alien craft, helping to equal the balance of power. With this alien craft, one man prepares himself to take on the might of the alien invasion by himself. The heart of XBook is the two characters that the story revolves around. We are introduced first to the human Ginger Jeeves, a survivor of the Great War, but not without his casualties. Having been deeply affected by the war, he has created an alternate world around himself. Now having to adjust back to a more normal environment, he has not been able to rid himself of these delusions. Ginger is not separate from the real world, yet he is unable to separate dreams, fantasies and delusions from reality, and it is this confusion that we see as Ginger struggles his way through each of the situations in which he finds himself present. He is a man of peace after having faced much death and wants only to find out what it is that these aliens want from Earth, hoping to be able to come to a compromise. Scourgefright is the supreme leader of the Trascon race. He also strives for peace. He has gained a fascination for Earth to the extent that he has taken on a human name, William, which we know him as throughout the novel. He aims for peace. Unfortunately, he feels that the only way to get at peace is through war. He no longer feels that the Trascons will be able to integrate themselves into Earth culture with ease, a view shared by the rest of his space-weary race. As he details life as a Trascon, we learn that the Trascons have sacrificed too much to be turned away at the last stop. They are desperate for Earth, but this desperation clouds William's judgment too much, for it is he who is calling the shots on the proposed invasion. This is much more of a character-led story rather than a plot-driven one, and as we follow the two characters, much of the conflict is detailed. Not just between the Trascons and the humans, but within both of the central characters. Thoughts, feelings and emotions are poured out to help us understand what they desire, what they want to achieve, and what has happened to bring them to this point. More importantly, why they may act in the way that they do. I have used many of the symbols of a science fiction story, yet I do not feel that XBook is suited purely for a science fiction audience. Its focus on the characters means that it is pulled out of this genre, and instead the primary concerns become the themes that are inherent in this book. There are many themes including isolation, conflict and obsession, as these are the concerns of the characters, not the story. Indeed, the method that I have chosen to tell the story is that of a first-person perspective, as this allows stream of consciousness thought to come out from the characters. The novel then jumps back and forth between Ginger and William. As the story progresses both in and out of reality, a mindscape is created, carrying us along with it. Well, that's the main part of the letter. But what I found on another page is a little bit extra that presumably I was never ever meant to send, but I'm going to read it out for you just because it explains a little bit more, even though the publishers were never going to get hold of this. XBook is a multi-layered text revolving around surrealism, fantasy and emotion. Its core themes are that of obsession, isolation and conflict. It is a first-person stream of consciousness narrative told through the eyes of two individuals, building up the emotion, drawing in the reader as the story unfolds. It is not just about the plot. That happens in the background, bringing these two individuals slowly together. XBook is about what happens inside these two individuals' minds. The plot is simple. It is that of conflict. It is just after the Great War of 1914 to 1918. Earth is facing another attack. We follow our two individuals, both on opposing sides, as they come to meet. First, we have Ginger Jeeves, a fighter pilot in the Great War representing the human faction. Secondly, we have Skadfreit, also known as William, leader of an alien race known as the Trascons. He represents the aliens. There is no opposing side. There are just two different sides to a much greater story, both of which the reader experiences as the novel unfolds. This is the conflict. The Trascons feel they need Earth to support their race, to allow them to grow and develop further, having fled from their previous home. The humans feel they are a threat. They feel under attack. This is a force that they cannot stand up to, but they know they must try. Their lives are at stake. Both are isolated from the people around them, yet they are the only two who can change the course of matters for the benefit or downfall of their own prospective races. Ginger, affected by the war, has created his own world around himself, allowing for much of the surrealness and mindscapes of the book. His world seeps into the real world, but he is unable to distinguish between the two. The way that he acts and the decisions that he makes are based purely on the way that he interprets what he sees. William, however, is distanced from his world by not being able to fully read the mood of his race, which is carefully tucked away. He is aware that he is responsible for making many major decisions which will affect many, many lives, causing him to tread a little bit more carefully. Yet his romanticism towards Earth affects his judgment. Which leads on to XBook's final theme, that of obsession, a theme that transgresses all dimensions. Time, space, life, death, reality and fiction. If it isn't enough that William is obsessed with Earth as a means of escape or Ginger's obsession towards self-destruction and fantasy, both have a desire for peace, morphed into a physical representation by the book's third primary character, Holly. An elusive character for William, but a supportive character for Ginger. Both abandon a metaphorical journey for peace to go on a much more physical journey. This becomes the emotional peak of the story as both have to face up to themselves. XBook is a surreal, dark, epic novel. Its market will be those who have a deeper interest in literature and want something more from their reading than a normal genre novel. A small but perfectly balanced book, this contains drama, action, fantasy and that old staple, love. So as it says at the end there, this is a book for people who want more than just a simple genre novel. Well, don't be expecting that. What you should be expecting is more like a Dan Brown book, except with less mystery and suspense, but more aliens. And fear not, this is only the first book in a loose series of trilogies that I shall be exploring after this one is completed. Whether my writing gets any better or not, I'll leave that for you to decide, but those shall come in the future. So I hope to see you again next week, where I shall be beginning with Chapter 1, So Might It Be. Don't be expecting too much next week. It's a big, long introductory chapter where you don't even get to see any of the characters until the very, very end, and even that's just a little snippet. But still, please, tune in, laugh along, and I hope to see you again. And just in case you're wondering, all text was written by me, Daniel's Nemesis, as was the music, and also the image that accompanies this podcast. The image sucks, doesn't it? But there we go. It was done by me. Thank you very much.